rep your third favourite trail and ultramarathon podcast while keeping cool and breezy in a DCR technical trucker hat, pleasing Woodland Vista, and one size fits most. Out now for $59.99 plus postage and packaging with a discount for DCR Aid Station paid subscribers. You'll find the code in the newsletter available from the Dirt Church Radio website, www.dirtchurchradio.com.
It actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does look pretty good. It looks very good, actually.
It does.
I'm stoked with it. And they're flying out the door, and lots and lots of people.
Limited supply.
Limited supply. And the people who've bought them love them, so get your mitts on one.
And they're off. Here we go.
Welcome to the DCR Aid Station number 16. I'm Matt Raymond.
And I am Eugene Bingham, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, hoki mai. And with us this week, I mean, it just seems a bit silly introducing them actually, because they're our special co-hosts and guests, Kerry Suter and Pottinger from the magnificent SQUADRUN. Kia ora, korua.
Kia ora, team. Kia ora.
How you doing?
Good. Welcome to Dirt Church Radio podcast, a podcast about running and not religion. Just in case you've googled Dirt Church and ended up here, because that.
Oh no, didn't we tell you we pivoted? Sorry, Kerry.
Yeah, in 6 years we're deciding that we're going to really lean into it.
Okay, this is a religion.
Now
okay,
taking
cool.
tithings.
Yeah, let's all take the wafer of M's cookies and the religious the offering of Tailwind or something, right?
Yeah,
David
that's
Hallard actually did. So the guest a couple of weeks ago, he actually did sort of midway. He swore and he went, "Oh, I'm sorry, can I do?" And we're like, "Not a church dude." He was like, "Oh my god,"
Yeah, get together on Sunday and praise be mileage, praise be the long run.
There we
He
go.
just crossed himself afterwards and he's good.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. How you
Good to
guys
be back.
doing?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Ellie?
Taking along.
Yeah.
But excited. I'm looking forward to not this coming weekend, but the next one, getting over to the Fire East Climb. That should be cool.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
it's going to be really cool. It's exciting. It's a heavy. Like I'm also aware that podcasts are they're fun and they're engaging and stuff. But we're actually we're threading the needle. This is a heavy topic, and it's one that requires of course due amount of respect and preparation. But yes, it's not for nothing, right? Like it's motor neuron disease is it's a big deal.
Absolutely. Are you going to put your shoes on, Ellie? Climb some stairs?
I hope to. I haven't actually made a plan about what I'm going to do, but definitely there will be at least one rep of fervour. And if there's not, then something's gone wrong.
Is one rep a rep? Isn't that just a one?
Yeah, these are life's important ponderings.
It'd have to be two to make it a rep. I don't know.
I guess it is. Like, what? Do you do one repetition? Yeah, you can't really, can you?
Prosecution rests.
So it's two for you. There you go.
Okay, it sounds like it needs to be at least two for me to say I've done a rep.
What is rep short for?
Repetition.
I think we've answered our own question there.
Yeah.
Judge Kerry has ruled.
Well, I've always thought it's a weird thing where people say you have two options. You actually have one option because you've got your original choice plus the option. That's one option. Two options is potentially three things or four things, depending upon how you look at it. And I'd like you to unravel that one in the comments.
That's true. Two options. I'd never thought of that.
Yeah,
Can we
spend a little
also
bit of time.
add,
That might keep you up at night. Keeps me up at night.
Can we also add reiterate to that list if we're going into tautology or things that we so we've got repetition, we've got two options, and reiterate.
Yes.
So I'm going to state my original proposition, and then I'm going to iterate it.
Ah, yeah. That you're not going to reiterate the iteration.
Exactly.
So you have to have three for...
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, English language, eh? Go do one.
This is why we only have 6 views on YouTube.
With all the
Hot
cool
takes.
content.
Hot takes.
Something like further, faster, there in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious. Go to further, faster now.
Oh, further, faster, there in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious.
Go to further, faster now.
Hey, look, before we get into this pretty cool chat that we've got lined up, we just wanted to give a shout out to, she's a very special friend of Dirt Church Radio, but also a very special squaddie, Jenny Hurst. She's the ultimate trail angel, really, and I think everyone who listens to this will have spent some time at races or just hanging out on the trails with Jenny. She's got something quite cool coming up, and she sent us an email just saying, do you mind mentioning it? We said, hell yeah, of course we will. So she says, as you may know, my big goal for the year is 60 kilometres for 60 years. So she's turning 60. I want to see the receipts on that. I don't believe it. Anyway.
I reckon,
Yeah. Fundraising for the Mental Health Foundation. It's going really well. And she's got an awesome loop mapped out, which includes, I was lucky enough to get along for her, that not TUM year, that, TUM was cancelled, and Jenny organised a 50k around Auckland, which was an urban trail run on the North Shore, and it was amazing. And I got to hang out on that one, which was cool. So she's got that and then added on a bit more. Anyway, she's got a good number of people joining her. She's even got some aid stations sorted. The fundraising is also going great. And she will put the link in our show notes, and she's doing it in memory of her dad, Herb Hurst, who took his own life when he was age 60. And she says he was a pretty special guy, and there's a brief history of him that she's written in that link. So get along. Most of all, I just wanted to wish her luck, because she's just someone who's always there for so many of us on the trails, and go Jenny.
Wonder if we can make it to like $6,000 for her 60 years. Like that, surely 6 has got to be a feature in that number of fundraising. She's a pretty special human. I'm hoping I might be able to get up there to be part of it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been in the SQUADRUN crew for quite a while, hasn't she?
Ages. Yeah. Ages. And she's done so much, and she's such a, she's one of those athletes that people really learn a lot from and aspire to be like, because she's just got so much passion. She's at all the events. I mean, God, at Wutukai, she was faster this year. I think it was her 3rd time doing it, and she was like, something ridiculous, like 12 or 14 minutes faster. And I was like, go Jenny, like, look at you getting older and faster. That's awesome.
Yeah. And she rolled up to volunteer as well.
Oh, of course she
did the gear check on the Friday, didn't she, Matt?
Yeah, where I forgot a headlamp and something else, like a water bottle. Like, I think I checked in her water bottle and Eugene's headlamp. I was like, yep, I've got a headlamp. Oh, man. So thank you, Jenny. Sorry about that. Ridiculous.
Was it your first event, Matt?
You'd think it was. And that's the kind of I don't know what the just that thing of, I've got this, of course. And just, no, a headlamp. I had everything else packed away, but didn't have my headlamp. And it's just,
I love that blasé approach of not having all the right stuff. I mean, not in an event situation where it's mandatory, but certainly when I'd go out for adventures, I'd be like, I feel like the adventure is a lot more fun if you just don't have enough food and equipment. Somehow the thing I'm doing isn't extreme enough, and it's much better if I'm trying to run 100 kilometers on a packet of Oreos with no headlamp. That just seems, that was my MO. Stupid, but more entertaining for me, and emergency services.
Stack the deck.
Better stories, people.
Yeah. But look, let's crack on. Here we go, and talk about better stories. This is a debate for the ages, the great mileage debate. So, do we measure when we're thinking about training? We're thinking about training for a specific goal or an event. Do we measure by distance or time? And is 2 hours of trail running the same as 2 hours of road running? Not to kind of softball into it, but there we go.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. So often with coaching, my answer is it depends. And this one also comes out with a bit of a depends. It depends on the objective of the session. So trail running versus road running, what kind of stimulus you're wanting from the training. It depends on the athlete, So I quite dislike distance for recreational runners because there's a vast range in how long 20 Ks could take someone, whether it's road or trail. So often when we program for people, we'll program time for trails and then distance for road, depending on the person. Yeah, what do you think, Kerry?
Yeah, I guess it's about what we're trying to achieve with the session itself. So, I mean, obviously, looking at this macro topic, the mileage debate, we're definitely going to, solve it all right here in the next 20 minutes. So that's good. And there won't be any questions following this. So that's going to be great. What I guess we hope to do is, give your listeners just a little bit of insight and things to think about, perhaps if they're out on a run right now or somewhere, and that, maybe some information and insight that can, have them, ponder a little bit more their own training and how we frame things. But in terms of, distance or time, I guess it's good to look at as a coach whether we're conditioning the athlete against fatigue across the central nervous system, in which case we might use something like rhythm running, which is typically in kilometers. It's on a quiet country road or unobstructed terrain where they can settle into a routine that's got the same pattern of muscle recruitment over a long period of time, and we try and fortify that central nervous system against fatigue, because typically that's the thing that causes us the pain and causes us to slow down even in ultra marathons. So in those situations, the modality of running on runnable flatter terrain, we'd be looking at a conditioning format that we typically dictate by kilometers. If we were looking at just developing cardiovascular fitness, well, we kind of can do that anyway. Cardiovascular fitness is sort of accumulated over time, and it can be done any time. Whether you're sitting down on a bike, your heart doesn't know you're sitting down, so it could be in a swimming pool or with any form of cross training. So in those situations, we can just as easily use time on trails or time running and accumulated perhaps across weeks or months, then as opposed to counting kilometers. But of course we've got that problem where Strava sort of breaks everything out into a histogram that we're measuring just kilometers or just time, and people are comparing just that metric, which obviously isn't fair if you've got an athlete training for an alpine or mountainous event where their kilometers come very, very slowly, and an athlete that's perhaps training for a marathon where their kilometers will come very, very fast, and it'll look much more impressive, of course, on one graph or another.
Just while you mentioned the old cardio fitness can be built by accumulation of time, including cross training. Sorry, what sort of effort do you have to put in to asking for a friend here who can't run at the moment? What sort of effort do you have to put in those cross training forms to actually get a decent cardio benefit? Because it's so hard to know, as someone who's so used to running, what's a good session on a bike or a good session in the pool in terms of building cardio fitness?
Yeah, really good question. So generally anything above sort of a brisk walk is going to, have a cardiovascular stimulus. So, relating that back to sort of a bike or swimming, generally any sort of moving that's a bit above stationary or a bit above super easy is going to elicit some sort of cardiovascular adaptation. Everything does, or movement does, hiking does, anything will. I like to use, as a loose guide, something like that 60% of maximum heart rate is sort of the point at which we want to sort of start looking at the very, very easy stuff. I say that very loosely because people have a very poor understanding of what maximum heart rate is, and they'll often, fall back to that 220 minus age, which is a very dangerous thing to do, because when we do 220 minus age, we're just putting a center line on a bell curve, a normal distribution of ordinary populace, and you're on there somewhere. You're not necessarily right in the center of it. So there's a lot of different, calculations to a 6 times your age times 0.4 or 0.6, female or female. But the best way to do it is actually just work out what your maximum heart rate is by doing some maximal effort testing, typically something like 3 minutes all out, maybe with a bit of an incline at the end of it. You'll probably hit your maximum heart rate on the second or third repetition, and that is a good sort of place to sort of go, now I know my maximum heart rate. Okay, 60% of that's going to be my, I'm starting to do some cardiovascular work. But, like in terms of a training stimulus, I like athletes to sort of sit in somewhere around that 68 to 72% training window for the majority of their training. That's quite prescriptive. But, that's a good sort of target to sort of aim towards. So around about there is good for the majority of training, which we try to steer away from words like easy because, all exercise is typically moderate. And we also try and steer away from words like hard because we don't want athletes to go and do something that's hard or worry about doing something that is hard. So we have to be careful about how we apply terms as well. But something like that is a good place to start. I might have gone further than answering your question there.
No, that's amazing. I was taking notes. Didn't you see me? Thank you. Hey, look. So we've jumped into this great mileage debate, which is the sort of imponderable question for all endurance athletes. But how much is too much? Let's keep it simple.
Yeah, it's a hard balance, right? Trying to get training right, because you want to be eliciting a stimulus from what you're putting your body through, and you want to be able to recover and adapt from it. So I think as you become more au fait, like there's that old cliche, like listen to your body, and becoming au fait with what's kind of normal, what you're recovering from, how you feel when you've pushed the boat out pretty far, and kind of going, okay, well, I know what I need to do now is just sleep and kind of take it a bit easier while I recover. So it's often we learn by finding out the hard way. But that's also where, like having a coach and talking to them and kind of getting that feedback is really important. So with the athletes that I work with, I like that kind of frequent communication, and you can see patterns with how people are finding their training, or if it's been a few days in a row, then it's like, right, okay, I don't think we're nailing the recovery. I think we need to kind of make sure that we're recovering from what we're putting the body through, and then go again.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money there, obviously, and beautiful to boot. I think it's good to your watch does this too. It'll say tries to give you some feedback on your training stimulus, which we have to be very careful about, because I don't want athletes to live and die by what their watch says. But we encourage overreaching. That'll elicit some stimulus for adaptation, and we sort of try to avoid non-functional overreaching, and that is sort of sustained overreaching that will typically lead to injury, or red S is quite common, more common in women, where we're doing just way too much work. So we're looking for sort of sustainable, repeatable bouts of hypertrophy and homeostasis, where we're eliciting some overload stimulus and then returning to homeostasis in a way that, maybe across a rolling average of 7 days, which is what we like to do, feels challenging, but is sustainable. And appreciating that, as we pile on our mileage, there are sort of certainly diminishing returns. There's some really good research done by Herman Ponce on some Tanzanian tribes, I think, looking at energy expenditure modeling versus basal metabolic rate. But basically, what looks to be unsustainable is bouts of more than about 42 to 50 kilometers per day for a long period of time. And there's not a lot of people out there that are actually training sort of 42 to 50 kilometers per day. That's definitely what looks to be very much the hard ceiling for humans. So we know that optimal adaptation is somewhere below that, and so you've just got to find that level that's right for you. And I think each athlete has got to find that personally, and we like to sort of look for do as much as you can do while still enjoying it, and maintaining healthy relationships with others. And I think that's really important and worth repeating. Is I think the right amount of training that people should do is the amount of training that they're still enjoying whilst maintaining healthy relationships with others, because obviously there are psychological barriers to the training as well as the physiological ones, and so keeping it healthy at a personal and mental level is very important. And really, if you were to start from scaffolding up, I would start by asking myself, how much time do I have available to train? And if you look at that, seriously, if you start taking notes and go, look at my per day or per week availability, it's probably something like an hour per day, probably some hours per week, probably, with a rolling fatigue that will dictate what that ceiling's going to be, which is good because, that's probably where we're going to fit into that healthy window that we talked about around psychology and physiology. But that said, what we do know from big run data studies is that mileage matters most, and that the fastest runners obviously run more, no huge surprise there, but they also tend to do a lot of a higher ratio of easier running. There's those easier term again, but they typically, what I'm saying is that the faster runners, they run more and they tend to run a little bit easier than most runners. So that's effectively less moderate and hard running as a representative of their ratio of running.
I have one statement and one question. It's a supplementary question, so I'll table it. First thing, I just looked down at my watch when you said that, and it said productive, and I was like, yes. And I know it means nothing, I know it means nothing, but I'm in the green. And for today, that's a good thing. And how arbitrary that is, eh? Like I might go and have like a greatest run ever tomorrow and get home and it'll say maintaining. And then the little cloud will, it's funny, isn't it? They've got it. They've got us sussed. They really do. And but I salute my Superwatch overlords. I'm here for it. The target market. I was thinking about how do you deal with athletes, because where's your 7 days? You know, like if we're trying to maintain homeostasis and recovery, but we're doing big runs on the weekends and then maybe a run midweek, you know, and if we are getting stuck onto like hours a week or mileage, you might roll through like your Sunday to Sunday average, maybe say, I don't know, 80 kilometers. But by midweek, some weeks, you might be creeping over that. You know, do you know what I'm saying? Like people, do you find that with some people? Like they're like, well, I'm only doing this, but where do you take that? Where does the week end and begin? If that makes sense.
Yeah, because it is easy to get caught up, right? Just looking at like purely at a week, but actually over the space of 10 days, you've run a lot more than you might normally run. But Strava doesn't show it to you like that. So that's where that kind of, I mean, looking at the bigger picture, often I'll look at the last 4 weeks of training for what people have been doing and look at the balance of the training and go, you know, like how close together are you putting these bigger or harder sessions? How are you feeling? You know, what's the body telling you? Rather than the watch, Matt. But
the watch is telling me I'm productive.
You know what? I take the good bits and all the other stuff. I'm just like, whatever, that's full of crap. Really though, like the most important measurement is how you're feeling inside your head and inside your body. So going, actually, how does this feel for me? Have I pushed the boat a bit too much? Is this the right amount? Like I should feel a bit tickled up, but then also have the opportunity to have a good sleep, have some food and recover from it, and then go, okay, yep, the body's ready to go again. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Well, yeah, and it kind of, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you think about what is productive. Like in my case right now, my context, you know, not having just fallen out of a coconut tree, I'm a product of the context that I exist in and all that goes before me. Where I am, I'm productive, but also, I'm going to euthanize my dog in a second, but
thought I could hear it barking.
Thanks, Ruby. But in a space where have 3, you know, growing later adolescent children, someone who shares the passion, the availability. Do you know what I mean? Like that actually, that productivity is reflected by the fact that we just went for a long run and now I get to like do a podcast with 3 of my best friends. That's productive. In times past, that same run at that same time would not have been productive in my other life because I would have got home and it's like, we can't cook dinner now and the kids are, you know, like it's so interesting, isn't it? Like what is productive in the grander scheme of things?
Yeah, and I think that's really important to have the bigger picture there to heart, because like I've seen it in coaching how much of a difference all of those other things going on in people's lives can make to their training. So, you know, like one lovely lady I coach, she'd been training, you know, relatively similar way for weeks and weeks and weeks, and she had another kind of quite normal week with a similar training load, nothing out of the ordinary, and she was like, oh, my quad's really sore, and I was going, I don't understand why, because you've not done anything out of the ordinary, but what was going on was that she was suffering quite bad menopausal symptoms, and so she wasn't getting the sleep. She was having night sweats, so that was actually massively impacting her recovery. Something that she'd normally recover from and, you know, be going great guns was actually this week is not working out for me. So or it might be work stress, or it might be kids are sick, or it might be, you know, like, I don't know, you've been on the road and you've been eating crap, so the way that you're recovering is different. So being able to balance like have a more holistic lens to it and go, what else is going on in my life? Am I going to recover from the training that I'm going through at the moment?
And I guess cooking that down then, so we've got the holistic part, but if you're wanting someone to, you've got a goal in February, say you're wanting to get to it, what are you prescribing? How do you determine the right amount for an athlete?
Yeah, it's understanding somebody's starting point and what they have going in their life, how much stress that they can absorb. So outcomes are, like what I will give to one person is going to be different to what I give to another person. Their running history, like I always kind of take into account their running age and go, how many years have you been running for? Because somebody that's been running for 1 or 2 years, like you'd treat a toddler differently to somebody that you'd treat a teenager. Like they're not going to give them the same kind of schooling that you would. Not that our training is schooling, but you know what I mean? So taking on board their starting point and how many days a week they can run, what kind of time, like availability that they have. And then kind of just considering what they're training towards. So something like Tarawera, you want them kind of heading out on the trails a bit, but also hopefully getting out on the roads and getting some good road running in as well. Kerry, do you want to add to that?
Little to add. It's a quality answer. You're very smart and beautiful. So I think everyone's listening is like, just tell me the numbers, like tell me what I need to do, give me the quantitative amount. And like we keep saying, it's got to be in the theatre of you, the athlete that you are towards the event that you're working towards. But the loose guide, what I like to see for those who want to get a pen and paper handy for athletes training towards a 50k event, I think something like 50k per week to finish and over 80k per week to perform well, sustained for at least 3 weeks prior to your taper, is a good sort of dart to throw at the board. For those training for sort of a 50 mile or 85k or a 100k event, I want athletes to be training sort of something like 65Ks per week to finish and in excess of 100Ks per week to perform well, sustained for at least 4 weeks prior to the start of their 3-week taper. And for those training for a 100-mile event, Matt leans forwards, I like athletes to be training something like 80 kilometers per week to finish and something like 110 or in excess of 110 kilometers per week to perform well, sustained for at least 6 weeks prior to their 3-week taper. So those are hard and fast for those who want the quantitative, not qualitative response. Please don't die trying to do them.
And with that 100-miler training, that includes hiking in that mileage as well, because you're going to be doing a bit of hiking in your 100-miler normally, unless you're one of those shiny diamonds that will run most, like the incredible David Roche, who just took the Leadville record.
Did you
after
see that?
19 years.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Amazing.
Yeah. Blew the barn doors off. It was like 15 hours and change for 100 miles at altitude. And, like, talk about walking the walk. There's a coach that running the run. There's a coach that can do, not just say, that's incredible.
Absolutely.
I wonder, and I'm going to go there. I wonder if it's that'd be a good talk about your why, like just wanting to destroy everyone and everything after kind of enduring the awesome source debacle, right? Like, you'd be like,
man. Red lightsaber.
Melting
I
crown
raced
face.
on the red lightsaber and I was always grimacing and I wanted to show everyone else why they were wrong, even though really no one was there heckling at all. I just imagined it. Maybe they were actually, screw those guys. But you showed them. I showed them. Yeah, that is however you choose to race is a psychology of execution. Really, there's a lot that goes into it. But as a coach, I guess one of the tricks is trying to find what lights the right fire inside the athlete, and sometimes it's the soft touch, sometimes it's the give them the red lightsaber and tell them to charge.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that his crew had Jason Coop masks on. Yeah.
Martin Cox as well, and Martin Cox.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. No, look, not taking away because it was amazing performance. Incredible. Look, just on that, your hard numbers there, Kerry, which I think probably athletes listening to this would have been going, yes, finally someone's given us some numbers. The key part of what you said after each of your proclamations there was sustained for at least. Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's consistency. It's no good going, I'm going to run, X number of miles and, just it being, you you look back and you've just done a dragon's back of mileage up, down, isn't it?
Yeah, like you've gone, I want to run 120k week because, but then you've got 2 or 3 weeks off afterwards because you've ended up like massively overreaching and getting niggly and injured or unable to just get the motivation to get out of the door. So it's always about what you can consistently kind of push to and sustain rather than kind of go, like I'm gonna blow the house down for a week sort of thing. Yeah.
I hit my number. I'm cool on Strava. Like, so what?
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? You don't want to go too early either.
No. And we saw that, and I remember years ago, Wes freaking out before she ended up being third place at Tarawera Mila, going, everyone's messaging me saying that they've been running 100-mile weeks and I've been running kind of 90 or 100 Ks. I was like, look at you, mate. You're fit and strong and fast. Like, I haven't seen you in this shape, before sort of thing. You've done a great job of it. So it's being confident knowing that whatever your number is, actually you're putting the fittest, strongest you that you could put on the start line. And would running another 10k a week have made you better, or would it have potentially put you out of the running?
Yeah. I have written this week about experience in my early 30s where I did some sustained training. I was aiming to get under a 3-hour marathon, and I got up to I had a decent 6-month period of consistent sort of 100-mile weeks, and I ran the fastest I've ever run. It was, I managed to. Oh yeah. But I ran really well, and it went really well. 2:43, and But I'd come into it. The fastest, I hadn't cracked 3 hours before that, and I just aimed it, and it was with the assistance of a guy called Arthur Lydiard.
That's nice.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, found him on the street somewhere. But yeah, I managed to consistently run 100-mile weeks. It went superbly well, and in my head, I went, cool. If I run further, I'm going to go even faster. So I was running, after the 6 months after that, I was running sort of 180, 200k weeks. And
I'm guessing this is
guess what,
Eugene?
No, I had a young family, and that's part of the story. Is that I had a young family, I had a busy job, and I broke, and it's because I think at 100 miles I could still manage the recovery well. I could still fuel well. I was juggling my, commitments. I was getting up early and running, so it wasn't a issue for the family, and getting runs in at lunchtime at work, so it wasn't family time kind of thing. So I actually was able to manage it quite well. But once I got further than that, and things got a bit out of control, it was unsustainable, and I broke down, and I never ran faster than I did. I did run another 2:43, but I didn't break my PB, so I'm saying I wasn't faster. And then after that, I got slower. And I was always injured. I spent more time in physio than I did actually training, I think. But I think the lesson for me, when I look back, I didn't recognize it at the time, was that, I'd found a good balance. I'd been able to train but also recover. Like you said, Kerry, maintain those relationships, maintain the work relationships. Once I went beyond that, things got out of kilter, and I didn't take that into account. I wasn't able to go for a midday nap, that sort of stuff, which you probably need to be doing if you're doing those longer, getting up to 200 Ks a week. So yeah, I guess, that's the moral of the story for me is even when you do have a number like that we just talked about in mind, it needs to be taken into the context of your recovery, all those other things that we've talked about. Don't just fixate on that number that we just dropped there. You've got to have that understanding of everything that came before it.
Huge. Do you reckon at that point? So Kerry touched on RED-S earlier, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. Do you think that you might have gone into that point?
Yep.
It used to be called the female athlete triad, so you probably didn't realize at the time that might have been you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so things like low mood, low sex drive, constant kind of niggles or injuries, gut issues. I'm trying to think what else I'm missing here. are some of the signs. So, yeah, I think
Abs-
it's worth kind of talking about. And it's not actually just like people think, oh, it's people with low body weight or professional athletes that this happens to, but actually it happens to everyday humans, like potentially you, pushing to that kind of volume and not being able to recover from it in a long-term way.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be at that volume, does it? It's
No,
I mean,
no.
that's
It's more than your body can sustain.
It's what
Yeah.
can your body sustain? Absolutely, you're bang on. And I'm sure I was suffering from that. And like you say, well, I don't even think people knew the phrase back then because we are talking 20 years ago. But even at that, even if they were, it was always spoken of in terms of young women, not 30-year-old guys. But yeah, I probably.
Fascinating.
Anyway, hey, look, if someone is training for an event, how do you determine? This is the $64,000 question. The $64,000 question. How do you determine how far their longest run will be?
Yeah. So like you'd have the best case scenario or the ideal, and then you have where the athlete's actually at and what's realistic for them. So it will be different for everyone. So ideally, kind of for 100K, you want a long hit out that's around 40 to 60% of race distance. 100 miler, it really depends where they're at and how far away from it they are. Like I quite like people having a longer hit out about 6 months out, so say in that kind of 80 to 100K range. So we've got quite a lot of athletes that'll be running Taupo 100K at Taupo Ultra as their kind of, I'm going to call it a confidence or a training run, which sounds silly for a 100 miler, but it gives them a good amount of time to kind of recover, get back in the training groove, and and then have some other shorter long hit outs before race day still. That might be more in that kind of 50 to potentially 80K range, but probably less. And then for a half marathon or a marathon, it depends again where they're at. If you're racing a half, you actually want your longer run to be longer than a half marathon distance, and layering in speed work or race pace efforts. But a lot of people that are going for their first half might have a long run that's kind of in that 16 to 18 sort of a K range.
Yeah, people are going to want the numbers again, Ali. So, but my hardcore numbers on this one is if you are training for an ultra marathon, I do quite like your Super Sunday to be something like 2 to 3 times your sustainable, repeatable weekend long run. So if you're normally training something like 2 hours on the weekend long run, then your Super Sunday that you might do maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks would be a conditioning exercise of about 2.5 times 2 hours or about 3 hours maximum times your weekend long run. So 2 hours by 3 would be 6 hours would be the hard ceiling. I really wouldn't push a lot of athletes longer than that if that's their sustainable weekend long run.
It's interesting too, Ellie, you mentioning doing it 6 months before. That's that's I think because of that recovery factor, isn't it?
Yeah, and like it's a confidence thing, right? So it's not so far out that you go, oh, I can't remember running a really long way, but it's also not close enough that if anything goes, awry, then you've got time to recover, or you're just back in a really good training groove. So I'm not a big fan of having a long run close to race day because you just don't want to carry that fatigue in. Race day, you want to be showing up feeling, like you've done your training justice and you're ready to go. And often, we'll find that after a bigger hit out kind of a run, you do feel a bit flat for, maybe a couple of weeks afterwards. So you want to go in with a good, strong mindset as well.
Biggest mistake I made in the miler build-up that I did in 2020 was running my longest long run about 7 weeks before the ultra, and although it gave me an incredible confidence boost at the time, it was like, wow, cool, I'm fit, I'm good. I've got no doubt, and I don't have any data to support this, but just my gut is that it took too much out of me, and I didn't go in as fresh as I should have if that run had been earlier.
depends a little bit on the spend, doesn't it? I mean, if you really overspend it, there's a difference between a Super Sunday that has you lying on the back lawn under the sprinkler versus the one you sort of cruise back into the house, open the fridge, grab a beer, and carry on with your day. So I guess you just got to have to be a little bit careful about what it is. But I think thinking a little bit about those long-term energy stores within the body and how long they take to replenish. So when we do our really long conditioning exercises, we're starting to deplete some of those energy stores that typically the fat cells around the organs and those stored within the muscles themselves. So when you get a nice cut of meat, or I've heard, you get that sort of marbling through the meat where the energy stores are, and that's part of what the muscles are going to draw on. So if you go out and do a Tarzan training run 4 weeks prior to your major race event, and you empty out all those stores, and sure, you might feel good for your 1 hour runs or even maybe your 90-minute runs in the weeks following. But what you'll find is once you get to sort of 3 or 4 hours, you really start to draw on the external sources to fuel the body to keep going. So we want our athletes to be completely topped up in those systems and feeling fresh, not just in their 60 minutes, 90-minute area, but you're way beyond that when they start to do their ultra marathons. When they're an hour 8 and they're grateful that they didn't do a 10-hour long run a month prior to race day. So if you have got one of those training programs that's got a big meaty run a month prior to your big race, please get in touch because there's something wrong with it.
These two words are an anathema to me. Junk miles. Is there such a thing? Is it elitism? Is it tie into overreaching? What's the consensus?
People love that term, junk miles, don't they? I think realistically, there's no such thing as junk miles, and that all training that doesn't lead to injury or extended fatigue has value. I think the training has diminishing returns, and that more is more, but more becomes sort of less more the more you do it, which is a lot of what Eugene was just talking to about. If 160 is good, then 200 is better. I think we have to be very careful about how we cut up our training. I think there's approaches that we can do, like double days and those sorts of things where we get a couple of bites at the cherry there, which can be an extra great way to sort of get our volume without eliciting too much fatigue. But I think the junk miles fallacy, comes from people sort of bucketing those middle speeds in as junk miles, and saying we have to have polarized training. We've got easy and hard, and junk miles is that middle speed. But realistically, we know that middle speeds have a lot of purpose in training, particularly when we're targeting races that are going to be run at middle speed intensities. Say like the half marathon or events taking 1 to 2 hours. So we know that an athlete can sort of maintain a threshold for up to about 66 minutes maximum. So if we're doing events that last about an hour, then we're absolutely going to be doing some training in that intensity. It's very useful physiologically and sort of mentally as well, sort of knowing how that feels to be there on race day and go, I've prepared at these speeds. So if you look at sort of a lot of the maybe Sydney Trail Series races or Auckland, Macpac Auckland Trail Series stuff, we've got races that are sort of maybe 2.5 hours. And sure, we're going to do some training and conditioning and intensities, in that, that, dare I say, junk miles intensity, because that's going to be really useful. And I think probably if I was to have maybe a macro lens on what I see with a lot of athletes is that we often do see athletes run a little bit too hard in hills and a little bit too easy on the flats, and there's probably a happy medium of finding the purpose for their training run and making sure that they're shoehorning their intensity into that, but really about eliciting the right adaptation that's going to cause the stimulus such that they can repeat it in a consistent way. I think we just have to be careful about bucketing things like 80% easy and 20% hard. When we bucket at things and polarize our training, we miss out on some very useful moderate domain training intensities. So we have to sort of a little bit be careful about that preconceived 80-20 paradigm.
The 80-20, I mean, that's the sort of Kipchoge really kind of took that to the greater unwashed, didn't he? And there was so many kind of Instagram posts and social media posts about his 80-20 approach. What is it?
That's Dr. Stephen Seiler from the University of Agder in Norway had, obviously the research paper that sort of, I feel like sort of the face that launched 1,000 ships. This is the paper that started that 80-20 I want to maybe call it a misunderstanding or misinterpretation. And I think part of the problem is that what you're referring to is training intensity distribution, and how we break up our our intensity and our training across maybe our training week. So the first problem we've got is that when we look at that, particularly when we look at something like Kipchoge, we're looking at a survivor bias. So we're only going to see those people that have survived. So where we see those elite athletes and we go, they do it this way, therefore that's, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, but that's not necessarily what's going to be right for you. So we need to be a little bit careful about, applying what we see at an elite level to ourselves. But probably the main issue with Silas research is that training intensity distribution was done by session count, not distance or time. And I think that's really important to maybe just have a quick breather and think about. They counted sessions, the number of sessions they did. If you think about the number of runs you do by week, they roughly said that 80% of the running was easy and 20% was hard, just when we were counting sessions, not distance, not time. But actually on closer inspection, what we did see was, and they don't use easy or hard, they use moderate, heavy and severe, which is difficult to comprehend, but all training is moderate, then you've got heavy training and then you've got severe training, but they actually had broken it into 3 steps for a start, so already people are misinterpreting what Sila was saying, but also it was 91% moderate, 6.4% heavy and 2.6% severe by time, and we're using heart rate in that instance, and so that's quite significantly different to 80-20, 91, 6.4 and 2.6. So even to sort of try and to rub that down to 80-20 and change it into a bucketed session count scenario, we're kind of missing the point there a little bit on that polarized bucketed training. And I think when we talk about training intensity distribution, I think that it always needs to be relevant to the runner, of course, and the event that they're training for and where they are in their training cycle, which we've talked a little bit already about in this podcast. But really the questions we want to think about training intensity distribution as an athlete or a coach is, what is relevant, what do I need, what can I handle, and when do I need it? And if you can answer those questions, great. If you can't answer those questions easily, then get in touch. But I don't want to go out there and sort of railroad the Sila 80-20 bubble. I also have some strong forming views about fluoride in water, but it is a little bit of dogma and maybe a little bit tinfoil hat. So I think it's important that athletes assign sufficient stimulus to elicit the adaptation, such that your training remains consistent, and we'll keep saying that, and that the volume is optimized for you.
Right. I'm not
busting myths all over the place.
Yeah. That's right. Take that. Look, let's touching on Kipchoge, circling back to memes, and sort of, I've got a final question, and it ties everything up. Again, context. So, and Eugene, I'm going to call on you to define this uniquely Riverheadian phenomenon. But what about people? Where do we stand on people who go straight up the Dave?
In case anyone hasn't heard us referring to this over the past 6 years, we have a friend, Dave Jack, who, if we said we were doing a DCMF half, which is a loop in the Riverhead Forest, which everyone thinks is a half marathon. So, roughly. No. Dave would take it as it needed to be 21.1 kilometres. So he would run past the gate, up the road, until he got to a point where he could turn back to his car and it would equal 21.1. Therefore, the phrase straight up the Dave came into existence. The people who run around the car park until their watch says they have completed the distance that they were aiming to hit before the session. So,
and that came to Providence, didn't it? There was that meme that said, sort of, you're doing it just like Eliud Kipchoge and his boys do, like I'm sure they, and that's the thing, they don't. But my question is, are we judging them too harshly, or do we just let, and there's enough going on in the world, we just let people be people?
Yes, you are, because I'm such a Dave. So yes, you're judging them too harshly, guys. Be kind.
Straight up the alley.
Straight up the Dave.
Beauty, right? Having in your mind what you want to set out to do and doing it. If it's a distance or a time. So I am definitely one of those people that likes to be on the button. Not all the time. Like sometimes I'm happy running 9.8 Ks, but a lot of the time I think often 10. Yeah.
It's the you can always fix it in the Strava edit anyway, so you can always just sort of what we see after Taupo Ultra Marathon is and I can nail this quote that's going to show up in a couple of months' time. Watch says 96 kilometers, but course is definitely 100. That's I can guarantee we'll see that on Strava at some stage in the next couple of months. And it's funny how the longer the race goes, the less inclined they are to do that car park rounding up game.
We've seen it though, Kerry. We saw it at
4 kilometers
UTA.
at the end of Taupo Ultra. Good luck.
Yeah, no, Taupo Ultra's too much, but yeah.
That happened at the end of Blue Lake because...
Was it you?
No, I didn't do it.
Oh.
I didn't do it. Well, my watch said 106. So, but it also said I ran into the middle of Nunga Taha, so God knows what was going on there, the atmospheric conditions. But yeah, Callum and I stopped at 96, and we both looked at each other and went, and you know, to Andrew McDowell's chagrin, I'm sure he's just snapped his keyboard on his knee as he's hearing this. We looked at them and said, look, we've done 96K. Can we get a mug? They're like, sure. Gave us a mug each. We were happy with that. You know, there was no, with either of us, like, no, we're not going to run up and down the road for 4K at the end of this. Like, we would have gone out for another lap if they hadn't shut the course. But
yeah,
it was, when you're presented with the opportunity to stop, yeah, we took it.
People at Parkrun, when you're volunteering there, doing the finishing tokens all the time code, and they come through the finish line, hooning past. They grab the token, but they keep going because they need it to be exactly 5. It's like, oh, come on.
But what if it was going to be a PB, Huge? What about then? It might have been.
But take the PB.
I have not done that. Okay,
the Parkrun number. Yeah. You get your time emailed to you. You're all
Do you know if it's not on Strava?
Yeah, it's a problem when you do a PB, the old in Hamilton, the old East Side 5K. You know, the Strava segment says 5K, which is great, but unfortunately, the course is 4.98 or something. You know, like it's like a 9.9 or something. It's so close to 5K, but isn't. But I ran my PB of like 15.24 there. And so what do? Do I add some seconds now and just say, look, my PB is about 15.27. Am I going to add some seconds on there, or just go, hey, look, Strava claimed that it's 5K, so I'm having it. Thanks.
You take it. You take it. Your PB is 15.24. Respect.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yucky
We
5K.
there was the what was it called? It was down the waterfront years ago. Irish pub down at the West Haven 5K. Anyway, that's where I ran my PB over 5K. But each week it was different. Different distances because it depended on which cars you were having to jump around, and pedestrians you were having to swerve around as you came through the viaduct, or so it was never exactly 5K.
This is going to be great though, because he runs a 2:43 marathon, so that 5K time was
16:01. You got me, Kerry. You got me. I was so gutted because I cruised that time, and I got to the end, and I was like, "Oh, this is easy." Yeah, next week I'm gonna have my PB is gonna have 15 in it. Never got close again.
One day you're going up the mountain, and then one day you're falling off the back of it. And you just don't know when that is.
Yeah.
So if you are improving and you're in that great fortunate cycle of success, please go out and smash all your PBs now, because one day you won't get them and they'll not be achievable anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember thinking that's it. I'm just going to go out of the track this summer and I'll bust out a sub 15 on a proper circle, so it would be so much easier. I never got around to doing it. So by my own measure, which is the only measure that matters, I hate my 5K time and I could have done better. So there we go.
Yeah. Same. Anyway, hey, look, we've done some decent nerding out here this session. My running nerdness is just off the charts. It's great.
This has been a good one. This is some quality aid station content. Whatever the price is, increase it. Mostly because Ali's worth it.
Paying $400 bucks for a cooling headband. Surely they can pay a bit more for aid station.
They're paying what?
Have you not seen? Those glittery diamond-looking headbands.
No.
With a kind of a rainbow cap.
Yeah.
$450 or something. Yeah.
Right. I first saw them in the triathlon at the Olympics, and I actually thought they were to catch all the toilet paper from the scent.
Yeah, if you're wearing sparkly headband at the Olympic triathlon, you've got.
No, they were.
No, yeah, I know.
Oh yeah.
I would glad wrap your mouth shut, maybe, or mask it the same. But has anyone? Yeah, I don't know.
I thought they might have just got lost. They've gone to the Taylor Swift Eras tour, and they'd taken a bit of a detour.
Yeah. Oh wow. That Olympics. I didn't. Yeah. Anyway.
We're leapers now. We used to be chuckers a decade ago, and now we're leapers. That's great. New Zealand is going to produce a generation of leapers, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yay! We jumped.
How good was the women's marathon finish? It was so good. They had the full Ruth Croft elbows going at the end there, coming in the last 200 meters.
Elbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
it was insane.
What's that race? Was that Sears? No,
it was Marathon Mont Blanc, wasn't it?
Yeah. Have you seen
Yeah.
that? Ruth Croft giving the old.
I come from the West Coast, get out of my way.
Incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
I want to
look
see
that
some
up.
footage of that now.
Yeah, we'll dig out the video and send it to
She's
you.
the nicest person. Are you serious?
I know. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no. She's got the elbows out. It's
red
amazing.
mist.
Yeah.
The red mist came down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Right. Well, look, the red mist didn't come down, actually. This was more of a cooling, informative mist. But thank you, Ali. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Eugene. And that's it for this week's DCR Aid Station. And thank you to the DCR Aid Station crew, you lot that support us every week. Stay tuned for the next quote-unquote regular DCR podcast, which is next week when we have another amazing guest lined up for an incredible chat.
Hey, konei. Hey, kona.
Thanks, Rigby.
If you want to get the DCR hit that you love ad-free and get it every single Wednesday, there's a way to do that. Sign up to become a member of the DCR Aid Station crew, $8 a month or $80 a year. Paid subscribers get full access to the newsletter featuring recommendations, reviews, and the special sauce. Special sauce is quite cool, isn't it, mate?
Maybe I've been drinking from the special sauce bottle a bit much lately, but really enjoy putting together the content, really love bringing it out to the people, and the people really love it too. So yeah, get involved, support Dirt Church Radio. We've been cracking on for 6 years now, and we really love bringing this to you. So help us help you to help us help you, helping us.
You can find a link on the website, which is www.dirtchurchradio.com.